The sun was sinking low over the Arizona desert, painting the sandstone cliffs in strokes of gold and rust. The air shimmered with heat, even though the evening wind had started to crawl across the plain. Travis Hale rode slowly along the canyon trail, his horse's hooves stirring small clouds of dust. He was a quiet man, one who spoke little and trusted less. Ever since the war ended, he'd wandered west in search of peace, though the desert offered more silence than comfort. He had been riding since morning, scouting for stray cattle that had drifted from his small ranch. By noon, the canyon swallowed him. Now, as the shadows stretched long, he heard something faint, a sound that didn't belong to the wind. It was weak, almost like the cry of an animal. Travis stopped his horse, tilting his head. There it was again, a soft whimper carried through the rocks. He dismounted and followed the sound on foot, stepping carefully around the brittle brush. After a few yards, he found the source. Under the shade of a dying mesquite tree lay a small child, barely 7 years old, his skin dark with dust and sun, his ribs visible through torn clothing. The boy's black hair clung to his forehead, and his lips were cracked and bleeding. He clutched something in his tiny hands, a half-eaten piece of cactus fruit. Travis's chest tightened. "Good Lord," he muttered, kneeling beside the child. The boy flinched, his eyes wide with fear, as if expecting harm. His voice was no more than a breath. "No hurt, please." Travis raised both hands slowly. "Easy, son, ain't no one gonna hurt you." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out his canteen, tilting it gently to the boy's lips. The child sipped greedily at first, then coughed, the water dribbling down his chin. "You alone out here?" Travis asked softly, scanning the horizon for movement, smoke, footprints, anything. But there was nothing. The land stretched empty in every direction. The boy said nothing. His gaze was distant, full of something that didn't belong to a child. Loss, maybe. Travis sighed. He knew the dangers. This was Apache country. If the boy's people found a white man carrying one of their own, there'd be blood for sure. But leaving him here, that wasn't an option. He lifted the boy into his arms. The child was light, too light, like a bundle of sticks. Travis mounted his horse and set off toward his cabin, whispering quietly, "Hang on, little one. You're safe now." The journey back was long. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the desert night crept in cold and sharp. Travis pulled his coat tighter around the child, who slept fitfully against his chest. When they reached the cabin, a small wooden shelter nestled against red rock, Travis laid him on his cot, lit the fire, and heated a pot of water. He found a tin of broth and spooned it slowly into the boy's mouth. "Take it easy," he murmured. "Too much'll make you sick." The boy obeyed, sipping like he'd forgotten how to eat. Hours passed. Outside, the wind moaned through the canyon walls. Inside, the fire cast soft light across the boy's face. Travis sat nearby, sharpening his knife out of habit, but his eyes never left the child. By morning, the boy had regained a little color. When he opened his eyes, Travis noticed their depth, dark brown, sharp, and wary. "You got a name?" he asked, setting aside his knife. The boy hesitated. "Taza," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "That's a strong name," Travis replied with a nod. "Mine's Travis." Taza didn't smile. He sat upright, scanning the cabin like a caged animal. "You, soldier?" he asked suddenly. Travis froze. He hadn't worn a uniform in years, but the mark of war was something no man could hide. "Was," he said, "a long time ago." The boy looked away, muttering something in Apache that Travis couldn't understand. It didn't sound angry, just sad. Over the next few days, Taza began to recover. Travis taught him how to boil coffee and chop wood. The boy said little, but sometimes, when he thought Travis wasn't looking, he'd stare out the window toward the far mountains, the direction of his home, no doubt. On the fourth evening, Travis noticed something strange. Taza grew restless, pacing near the door. His eyes darted to the horizon again and again. "You expecting someone?" Travis asked gently. Taza didn't answer. Instead, he whispered, "They come." Before Travis could ask what he meant, the boy bolted to the window and pointed. Across the plain, 3 figures were approaching, slow, deliberate, and wrapped in desert shawls. Even from a distance, Travis could tell they were Apache women. His heart kicked in his chest. "Lord help me," he muttered. He wasn't afraid of dying, but he knew how the tribes saw trespassers, especially those who took one of their own, even if it was to save him. He stepped outside as the women drew near. The leader, tall and fierce-eyed, carried a bow across her shoulder. Her gaze fixed on Taza, who stood trembling behind Travis. The other two women flanked her, one older, one younger. The tall woman spoke first, her voice low but commanding. "White man," she said in broken English, "you have our child." Travis raised his hands, palms out. He was dying. "I just wanted to help." She studied him for a long, silent moment. The wind stirred the dust between them. Behind her, the younger woman began to cry softly, seeing Taza alive and well. The leader finally nodded. "You feed him." "Yes," Travis said. "Fed him, gave him water. He's safe." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Why?" Travis hesitated. He didn't have a good answer. "Because no one else would've," he said simply. The woman's expression shifted, something between respect and sorrow. "You risk your life for Apache boy. That is, not the way of your kind." Travis let out a tired breath. "Maybe not, but I ain't my kind." For a moment, the desert was still. Then the woman motioned to her companions. They walked forward, gathering Taza into their arms. The boy clung to them, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on his face. As they turned to leave, the leader paused. "We come again," she said. "Soon." Travis frowned. "For what?" She didn't answer, just met his eyes with a strange, unreadable look before vanishing into the growing dusk. When the canyon fell quiet again, Travis stood alone in front of his cabin, the warmth of the fire flickering behind him. He felt the emptiness settle in, Taza's laughter, the small footsteps on the floorboards, gone. But as the night deepened, something inside him whispered that this wasn't the end. The Apaches would return, and when they did, it wouldn't just be to thank him, it would be to test what kind of man he truly was. The desert of southern Arizona stretched endlessly before the eyes of Travis Hale, a rough and weary cowboy who had long given up counting his lonely miles. The year was 1872, and the land was still wild, ruled by the wind, the heat, and the whisper of danger that came with every distant cry of a coyote. The Civil War had ended years ago, but for Travis, peace had never come. He'd fought, he'd buried friends, and now he rode aimlessly across the canyon searching for stray cattle, or perhaps for something he could no longer name. The late afternoon sun baked the ground hard as iron. Sweat rolled down his neck, and his horse, Dusty, snorted with exhaustion. Travis was thinking of turning back when a strange sound cut through the air, a faint, trembling cry. It didn't belong to a coyote or an injured deer. It was human. He reined in his horse, scanning the brush. "Hello," he called out. Only the wind answered. The sound came again, weak and pitiful, carried by the dry breeze. Travis dismounted, boots crunching against gravel, and followed the noise toward a cluster of withered mesquite trees. There, under the brittle shade, lay a small child. The boy's skin was bronze and sunburned, his hair tangled and matted with dust. His little hands clutched a torn scrap of cloth, and beside him lay a few half-eaten cactus fruits. His lips were split and dry, his breathing shallow. He looked no older than 7. Travis knelt beside him, removing his hat. "Well, hell," he murmured. "What happened to you, kid?" The boy stirred, his eyes opening just enough to see the tall figure hovering over him. He tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. "No hurt, please." The words hit Travis like a stone to the chest. He reached for his canteen and lifted the boy's head gently, letting a few drops of water fall onto his lips. The child swallowed greedily, then coughed, his small body shaking. "Easy now," Travis said softly. "Ain't no harm coming to you." The boy blinked, his dark eyes full of suspicion and fear. His clothes were Apache. Travis recognized the handwoven patterns on his torn tunic. That made things complicated. The Apaches didn't take kindly to white men wandering their land, much less one carrying off one of their children. But what was he supposed to do? Leave the boy here to die? "All right, son," Travis whispered. "We'll get you some food and a warm fire. You just hang on." He lifted the boy into his arms. The child weighed almost nothing. He mounted Dusty, settled the boy against his chest, and began the long ride back to his cabin. The desert turned crimson as the sun dipped behind the cliffs. By the time they reached home, twilight had swallowed the land. Travis dismounted carefully and carried the boy inside. The cabin was small, a single room with a cot, a table, and a wood stove. He laid the child on the cot and lit a lamp. After boiling water and stirring together a weak broth, Travis fed him slowly with a spoon. The boy barely opened his mouth, too weak to resist. "That's it," Travis encouraged. "Just a bit more." Once the bowl was empty, he covered the boy with his own blanket and sat nearby, staring into the fire. The flames flickered across the boy's face, revealing deep exhaustion and innocence mixed with the haunting look of loss. By dawn, the child was breathing more evenly. When his eyes opened again, Travis smiled faintly. "Mornin', partner. You've been out near 2 days." The boy looked around, uncertain. His voice was hoarse. "You, soldier." Travis froze for a moment. He hadn't heard that word in years. "Used to be," he admitted. "Long time ago. Now I'm just a man trying to make a living." The boy hesitated. "You kill Apache?" The question came like a knife. Travis set down his coffee cup and sighed. "I fought when I was told to fight," he said. "But no, I never had reason to kill anyone who wasn't trying to kill me." The boy studied him for a long moment, then whispered, "My name, Taza." "That's a strong name," Travis said. "Means, son, in your tongue, doesn't it?" Taza's eyes widened. "You know our words." "Some," Travis replied, picked up a few from an old tracker years back. The boy said nothing more. Days passed, and Taza slowly regained strength. He followed Travis around the cabin, watched him feed the horse, fetch water, chop wood. Sometimes, when Travis whistled or hummed, the boy would listen quietly, though he never joined in. At night, Taza sat by the fire, staring out the window toward the distant mountains. His silence carried a story, a tribe somewhere out there, a family wondering if he was dead. Travis wanted to ask how he'd gotten lost, but he didn't press. He knew the desert could swallow a man or a child in a heartbeat. By the 4th day, the boy began to eat properly. Travis had even managed to draw a faint smile from him by teaching him to whittle a small wooden horse. "You've got good hands, Taza," he said. "Your people make fine things. I've seen their work." Taza's eyes softened. "My mother makes beads," he whispered. "She waits." Travis nodded quietly. "Maybe one day, you'll show me her work." That night, as the wind whistled through the canyon, Travis felt something strange stir inside him, a warmth he hadn't known in years. The boy's presence had filled his cabin with life again, like a flame flickering in the dark emptiness he'd carried since the war. But the next evening, everything changed. It was near sunset when Taza grew restless. He stood by the window, peering out across the desert. "They come," he whispered. Travis frowned. "Who comes?" The boy pointed toward the horizon. Dust rose in the distance, 3 figures moving slowly on foot. Travis stepped outside, the air dry and tense. As the shapes grew clearer, his stomach tightened. They were women. Apache women, wrapped in shawls, their faces painted with earth. One carried a bow, another a small pouch of herbs. Their steps were sure, their eyes fixed on him. Taza ran out of the cabin before Travis could stop him. He shouted something in Apache and sprinted toward them. The women quickened their pace. One of them, the eldest, let out a cry, half a sob, half a prayer. She fell to her knees as Taza reached her. Travis watched silently, the wind tugging at his hat. He knew better than to move. The women surrounded the boy, touching his face, his hair, his hands, as if confirming he was real. Then, slowly, the eldest woman rose and turned to Travis. Her face was stern, her eyes glistening with tears. She spoke in broken English. "White man, you find our child." Travis nodded once. He was starving. "I did what anyone should have done." She studied him for a long moment, then said, "Most white men do not help Apache. You, different." Travis met her gaze steadily. "Maybe so, but I figure a hungry child ain't white or Apache, just a child." The woman said nothing. She took Taza's hand, ready to leave, but before she turned, she stepped closer and whispered, "Our tribe remember this." Then they were gone. 3 shadows melting into the red dusk, the boy's small hand held tightly in his mother's. Travis stood alone before his cabin, staring at the empty desert. For the first time in years, he felt something close to peace, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a new chapter he hadn't expected to write.